sheet went away. There it is. Okay. All right. Let me pop over to the right screen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Black, and this is the Paige Black Leadership Series. We go live here on LinkedIn every single Thursday. And what I do is I bring in experts to talk about solutions to challenges that business leaders in the middle market face. And today we're talking about how human resources can help with the Great Resignation. So if you don't know the data, we talked about this a little bit last week, but the Department of Labor reported in November of 2021, there were 10.6 million job openings, but there were only 6.9 million workers. And what that means is if you're a CEO and your team is trying to hire someone, for every 3 jobs out there, there are only 2 people to fill those jobs. So 30% of the jobs will go unfilled just because there's no one looking. On top of that, so let's go into a little bit more data. In that month alone, 4.5 million people left their job. Also, last fall, Fortune magazine collaborated with Deloitte. I talked about this last week as well. They interviewed CEOs. They interviewed or surveyed, I should say, I believe it was 117 CEOs. 73% of those CEOs said that labor and skill shortage is the most likely external issue to impact their business in the next 12 months. So the Great Resignation is a thing. I had a lot of questions after our last one, and I'm really lucky that I'm able to bring in Lisa Smith. Lisa is an HR consultant with Puzzle HR, and I have her introduction here, but I put it down. Let me shift my slides a little bit. Excuse me, folks. I'm still getting used to this new way of doing business, and it isn't working. All right, so Lisa, she's a human resource consultant with Puzzle HR. She has over 20 years of progressive success providing prestigious organizations with strategic human resource solutions. Lisa's broad experience in leadership development, employment law, employee relations, super important right now, performance management, compensation, team development, talent management, succession planning, coaching, organizational design, training, and talent acquisition. So today we're really interested in this talent acquisition piece as well as employee relations, right? My name is Mike Black. I'm the CEO and managing partner of Paige Black. All I get to do here is ask questions. So without much more, let's get started. So this question came from a client. I was having a conversation with them about some of their work. And so this client, they had 15 employees 4 years ago. And today they have over 70. They've grown exponentially. They're an awesome company. However, because of the nature of their work, they are distributed. Not only are they distributed from people work at home, but actually people don't live near the office. And so then their question is that, well, okay, we're working distributed. Some of the people have never met each people in person. Even if we do meetings, we haven't been able to meet people in person. How do we help them connect with each other? How do we help them connect with our mission? How do we reinforce our culture when over half our team works remotely? All right, let's get Lisa on the stage and let Lisa answer the question. What are your thoughts, Lisa?
All right. So just so you know, I did receive these questions ahead of time, and we have 160 HR professionals across the country. And so I did poll them and ask them for examples of where we've helped companies in these areas. So it's not just my knowledge, it's my teammates as well, which is great. So the first thing I'll say is you have to poll your employees, because what I think is the right answer or what you think as a leader may not be the shoes that person is in today, and they may need something different than what you believe. And this was proven by a recent study by McKinsey, where they surveyed employees about what's important to them and then the executives, and it did not match at all. The executives were thinking about things like compensation and benefits, whereas the employees were talking about feeling valued and, feeling connected to the organization, which was not at all what the executives thought. So the first thing we always do when we're looking at solving a problem for a client is we have to poll the employees and figure out what's going on. And that can be done a lot of different ways. It could be an employee survey, it could be exit interview data. We also do something called stay interviews, where we talk to the employees today and find out, why are they here? What makes them engaged? And, what would it take for them to leave? And so getting that data is super important before you start acting on some things. So
Lisa, really quick.
Yeah.
When you're doing this, what are some of the questions you would suggest they ask to get the right data? I think it's really like surveying one is daunting by itself, but it's easy to ask the wrong question and then you get the wrong answer.
Right. So I'll give you an example of, I've managed large teams in the past, and I have a great example of a employee that I worked with. I did a stay interview, and I asked her, what's most frustrating about your job? And she told me that it was a particular report that she was doing for executives. And once I dug into it, I figured out that the reason it was frustrating was because we had changed executives over time. Their criteria they wanted to look at had changed. And so the data that she had received from IT was not the data they asked for. So she spent hours manipulating that data to get it to where the executives needed that information, got the needed information. So all it took was having a meeting with IT and her and figuring out what data she actually needed. And it went from a couple hours of a very frustrating task down to 30 minutes. And so sometimes having that external perspective on things really helps employees. And so ask them what frustrates them, because usually that's something within your control.
Thank you. What I would think, so one side is what don't you like about your job? What about if we want to understand why they like their job? That could be simply the question, but do you have thoughts on that question?
Right. So what causes you to stay here? What is the motivating factor to continue to work here? And, let them talk about that. And that'll help you understand, what you don't want to change, because that's important to that individual.
All right, great. All right. I know you did I appreciate the fact that you were now essentially giving free advice to people who are on this call, because I've got a couple of different questions from different people. Did you have more of a response on this idea that for the remote company that's working remotely and they've got 70 people and they're trying to continue to drive engagement, they want to have connection with other employees and all of that. And I kind of diverted you. So I want to make sure you have the opportunity to fully answer that question.
Yeah, so I think you have to look at, what are some of your values, and then how can you match up some activities to cause community around those values. So one of our HR program managers works with a client that authenticity is really important to that client, and that's one of their values. And so, bringing your full self to work and feeling like you are accepted is really important. So getting to know each other is really important to the employees as well, and that sense of community. So it may sound kind of silly, but it was a really simple event that she held where it was International Pet Day, and she had all of the employees post their pets on their chat and share information. And it just helped people feel like they were bringing their full self to work and who they are, and connecting with other people in the group. Another thing that I would suggest, especially when you've got, people around, working remotely, is, you want to make sure that you have the skills and the technology and the tools and resources you need to get your job done. So one client made sure that their employees received a $250 annual stipend to make sure, do you have the right technology? Do you have a second screen you need? Do you have a printer? And help subsidize that. So I think that you have to look at what's important for that employee and then address that with some, engagement ideas.
That really further an email I got this morning. They did some research they interviewed 250 salespeople about the Great Resignation.
Mm-hmm.
And audience, first, I'm going to challenge you in your head. You don't need to type in the answer especially if you're driving. If you're driving, don't do it. But if you are, why do you think salespeople stay at a company? I know when I open that email, my impression would be that salespeople stay at a company because of the compensation. That's often the perception that people have. And I will tell you that they gave 5 factors, and compensation actually wasn't on the list. And it really ties in. The second one on the list was essentially a summary. The summary, if you look under the or in between the lines, it comes down to, can they be successful with their job? It really got into sales pipeline, and is their sales pipeline full? Can they hit their goals? Was one of the determining factors on whether or not they're going to say. So if you have a really good salesperson, know that they're probably looking, and also know that maybe just increasing compensation is not the answer that you should have to solving that. All right. Did you have more on that, Lisa?
No, I'm ready for the next question.
All right. Really quick. Let me pop in here before we do the next question. I'm going to talk briefly about Paige Black. We're a company. We're really a communications firm. We help people leverage communication to reach their goals. Sometimes that involves just what people would normally call marketing. And there we work with companies that have these big, large strategic goals. They've got teams they've got salespeople and they're working on hitting these goals, but they don't know how to communicate their value, or they don't know where they should be marketing. They don't know how to put that all together into a strategy. We build a custom plan to help them do that. Second area we work with is companies of sales teams. They're doing well, but they're missing large deals that they feel like they shouldn't miss. We will come in and do research. We'll interview people they won deals with. We'll interview people they lost deals with. It is confidential, and we do pay for that time. But we then come look at what's the difference and how do we improve their sales process. Third area is actually really close to this. It's looking at It's looking at employment brand. The idea of why do people work at your company, and how do we communicate the value of working at your company in a way that it pulls in more of your best people who are like your best players, and maybe pushes away people who aren't your best players, so that you can hopefully get some results out of that. So those are the three things. If we can be helpful, give us a shout. We are actually we've got a webinar next week. It's on Tuesday at this exact same time, but on Tuesday, so 10 a.m. Mountain. Tuesday, January 18th, how you overcome your hiring and retention woes through better communication. So I hope you can join us. I'll see if I can't share that link right now, but I'll go ahead and share it later after this, and you guys can jump in there if it makes sense. With that said, let's move into our next question. So this comes from a manufacturing company. I was talking to the CEO on the phone, and he has about, I think, 50 or 60 employees. And currently, not only do they have if you're not in manufacturing, you should know that supply chain is just a mess right now. That's why everything's getting more expensive at the stores, and that's why they're running out of stuff when you buy it. It's also true for manufacturing that their supply chain's a mess. COVID's a big impact. 30% of his team is out with COVID right now. They're months behind on their work. How does this person really kind of maintain morale and keep going in these circumstances? And I feel like I'm really lucky that Lisa took the time to ask her entire team, because I think we're going to get some great answers. So what do you say, Lisa?
All right. Well, first of all, I want to tell that CEO that they're not alone. A lot of us are struggling with this right now. And one example of a manufacturing company that we work with is we implemented and worked with them to implement what we call Power Hour. And so it's a fun, friendly competition where we, help the employees understand, hey, we're in a crisis and we're all in this together. And so we're going to pull together and we're going to try to make this fun. So in the morning and the afternoon, they have what they call a Power Hour. And so they try to produce as much as they can with the same level of quality in that hour. And whoever produces the most gets a gift card. And then they also have a party at the end of the quarter to celebrate, and they give raffle tickets to number 2 and number 3. And the prizes that they get for that raffle come from their vendors. So they don't have to pay for these fabulous prizes. They get it from their vendors. And so this just made it fun and friendly competition. Another example of a client is, somebody who's in that similar situation. They're really busy right now. They've got some, people out on COVID, and they need everybody to pull together. So what they did is they rallied the troops, they got people excited, and you've got to tell them, we're in this together. Here's what we're trying to accomplish as a team, and make them feel a part of something bigger than themselves. And they gave their employees an extra day of PTO to use in the summertime, because, that's when COVID's not as rampant, and, just to reward them for pulling together and making it through this difficult time. Another thing that we've seen done that has worked well is that, you need to think about the whole person is coming to work. And, they've got, either a family or they've got other responsibilities that they're not attending to because they're working so much. So we've sent DoorDash dinners to the family and, say their spouse, hey, thank you for picking up the slack because your spouse or your significant other is working so hard for us, and, appreciate the family for the sacrifice that they're making. The other thing that I will talk about is I have a company that I've worked with where they're in the IT space, and they're competing with a bigger competitor. And so how do they compete for talent when they're dealing with this bigger competitor who pays a lot more, can afford a lot of great perks? So what he told me is that he said, I hire moms. And I think this is brilliant, especially given today that such a large percentage of women left the workforce during COVID. How do we bring these ladies back? And he said, there's nothing wrong with this job. It's a great job and it's an important job. But do you know how many women are sitting behind a receptionist desk at their local schools who have a master's degree? And he said, I find those women who need flexibility, and maybe, it's a manufacturing site or a call center or whatever it is where you need people, but maybe 9 to 2 is that flexibility that they need. And he said that the greatest benefit that he gives to these ladies is he gives them free cleaning service once a week. And he said, it's the best $100 a month or a week that I can spend, because it gives them the time to do something fun in their spare time instead of cleaning. And then it makes them more focused and engaged and appreciative to be at work.
Hey, if he paid for my cleaning, I'm sure I would be ecstatic. So,
Exactly.
and I don't do the majority of the lift on that, I should say. So
Right.
Really quick, before we move into our next question, Bruce Lasco, you are most welcome. We're happy to have this. If you have questions, pop them into the chat and we'll see if we can get them up there. Sometimes that's easy. Sometimes we get people that are driving and it's hard. Really quick, folks, if you are listening, do a quick like or share of this so that we can get this event out. I do think that Lisa's providing a ton of really good information for people. We'd like to share that with other people. So if you know people who should attend or just like and share it, that'd be wonderful. I am going to move us to our next question. Some companies just can't adapt to what we're talking about in the world. So a manufacturing company, I know he made a joke. There was a survey on LinkedIn about 6 months ago, and essentially it said, do you think work from home should be an option from now on? And his comment was, absolutely, as soon as they can put a 2-ton press in their living room. And that brings to mind, like, I think some jobs are adaptable, even like call centers, like people do work from home where the technology works today that they can answer the phone, manage call centers, route calls to a computer at your house. So it is possible to provide that. But some you can't be a FedEx driver. You cannot work in a manufacturing plant. I don't think you can work in manufacturing and do that. And so we've got those kinds of issues where there is this 9 to 5 duty and we aren't able to offer that same flexibility. How do we manage that?
Well, I would answer this for all employers. Again, survey your employees, talk to them about what's important to them. Because I will tell you, I've talked to a lot of employees who are 100% work from home, and they're actually frustrated with that because they want to see people. They want to be in the, workplace and see other people live. I had one friend who said, I'm so tired of walking from my bedroom to my living room, which is where my office is. And, it doesn't feel as relaxing to be at home because that's my workplace too. So just so you know, if you are in the office or have to be in a truck or whatever that is all the time, there's a positive to being around people as well. But I do understand the question and why it's a tough issue. One of the clients that I work with is a call center, and we surveyed their employees to find out what was important to them, and we wanted to understand flexibility and things like that. And what we learned from them is that they want to be paid weekly. And what we're finding with a lot of employees in that segment, they are wanting that on-demand pay. And that's more important to them than flexibility. So you can't assume that flexibility is the most important thing to somebody. Sometimes it's something different, like getting that payment more quickly than waiting every 2 weeks. But within those parameters, there can be some flexibility, like what I talked about with the IT company who, can give some of these working moms flexibility on the schedule starting from 9 to 2 so that their children are at school while they're working. So, looking at creative things like that can help you when you can't have people working from home.
All right. So Ryan, I hope I say this right. Ryan Darmody. I just caught the 60-minute story on this. I don't watch, we don't have TV, so I had not seen that.
Oh,
so I can't comment on that, but great to also see another impactful conversation around the topic. Thank you, Ryan. If we can add more, would love to. I had a follow-up question and I lost it, Lisa. Let me think for 1 second. Okay. So this same person, I reading between the lines in his email, I think there's, and this may be my advice, I'd love your thoughts on this as well. My sense is he was frustrated. Like he started talking about how do we survive? Like my question, I made it a little bit nicer. His question was, how do small businesses survive this? And I think it's tough right now because you're caught, there's inflation. So that means all of your employees' costs, like if you look at like really a lot of core costs that they have, heating, all of those things, their costs are going up. Real wage growth is down. So they actually are making less. If you look at like their ability to spend, they're making less than they were a year ago. And so you as a business leader, if you want to keep them, you're going to have to give them a raise. So I have 2 pieces of advice and then I'll throw Lisa, let her think about this while I do that. My first piece of advice is that I know from the tone of your email, how do I survive this? My advice to you is take a break. Because I feel like that alone tells me that you're burned out. And I think everybody's burned out and that's a struggle. And so make sure you take care of yourself because you can't take care of your team if you're not taking care of yourself. My second thought for you is you have to start looking at how you're going to raise your prices. That if you want to pay more, and obviously that puts constraints on the bottom line, that if you're going to pay more, that your costs increase, you're going to have to pass that along. And that's unfortunately just the way the world works. There's not like math is math. And so you have to look at how are you going to start to have the conversation of like, we are increasing our rates and how you're going to have that conversation. If that's a struggle, give me a call because I can help with that. All right, Lisa, what are your thoughts about that?
So I would say, going back to increasing prices, I think everybody's doing that. And I think that's, a difficult conversation to have. And I'm glad that you're able to help people with that. But people understand that when you have to do that because they want you to be in business and be sustainable for the future. So I think that absolutely has to be a conversation. I talked to a business owner the other day who owns a catering service. And I loved his attitude about this because he called it, instead of calling it the Great Resignation, he called it the Great Attraction. And, the way he runs his business is he, again, looks at that whole person. He looks at creative ways to find talent. Like he works with a local high school to teach cooking classes and teaches kids how to use a knife and, has an internship for these folks. And it does take some time, but then he's able to recruit some great talent. And what he said is based on his culture and how he treats his employees, he actually has higher quality employees now than he did prior to COVID because of the way he's been really creative and treats his employees. The other thing that he and I talked about is, in this time of, talent shortage and, supply shortages, you have to look at what are you really good at and how do you shine? And so in his business, he said, we're really, really good at corporate events, but we're not as great at weddings. So we're just going to start saying no to some business and really shine in areas that we are really good. And so, Puzzle HR, we do that too. We look at that and we say, gosh, this part of our segment of our business, we don't have as high of level of expertise as we would like, or, it's not as profitable, but we really shine in this other area. So let's focus on that. And I think a lot of these small business owners have to think about what is it they can shine at and where do they have the talent to really take care of their clients in the best way possible.
Right. So if you're constrained on people because there are not enough people to hire right now, we all know that's true. Right. Then making sure you're actually really like being even more specialized, only taking projects. This is always good advice of only take projects that you can actually really do well. I have an 80%. Like I want us to be 80% confident on everything in the project. And then if there's a little bit of growth in certain areas, I'm fine with that because we do need to grow and adapt as a company. That's just the world moves too quickly for that if not. So being more picky, I think is a great idea. That's really cool. Thank you.
Right.
All right, folks, that is it for today. Before we go forward, thank you, Lisa, for coming on and offering all this great
For
advice.
having me.
You bet. This is going to be turned into a podcast and released as a podcast later this month. We actually have last week's done almost, and we're going to get it rolling. So I'm excited to do that. I'll make sure you get that, and we'll share that as well in this event so that people can get a listen if they'd like a review. However, next week it is an HR focused theme this month. And so we're looking at how do you build a talent pipeline? And I think that's critically important as we see all of these shifts. There's the saying, I think, Lisa, you said this last week when we, people say, well, what happens if I train them and they leave? And then the obvious rejoinder to that is the idea that, well, what if you don't train them and they stay? Well, really, it's about how do you have a talent pipeline so as business shifts, you are able to move people into the right position. We're going to have Stacey Cookshausen on to talk about that next week. So there it is. Thank you to everybody that commented. Please like and share again, and we will see you at this exact same time next week.